So
Could some of the Bible stories in the Torah maybe be copied from certain Paleolithic periods, kind of like the story of the Gilgamesh, in reference to like Noah and how there's certain similarities?
the Epic of Gilgamesh doesn't mention Noah, but it mentions a flood. Now, Gilgamesh himself didn't
Right.
experience a flood. He meets a sage in the story who recounts a story. I have no problem assuming that. It doesn't make or break my religion just because some legend was recycled and appears in the book of Genesis. The word Torah
Right.
doesn't mean narrative. The word Torah means instruction. So
Okay.
nowadays, colloquially, we use the word Torah to mean the complete 5 books of Moses. But I have no problem assuming that that's a new interpretation. Torah means the instructions within the Torah.
So
I mean,
why do we assume that Torah has copied from other nations or other legends?
I'm not assuming that. So he's
Well,
saying, is it possible? Is it a possibility? Yeah. So what you're proposing is also true, Courtney. It could be possible that it's the other nations that took it from us, right? But there's many people who will drop Torah just because someone convinces them that because the Book of the Dead or the Code of Hammurabi or the Epic of Gilgamesh may contain some narrative that appears in the Torah, that this in some way destroys our religion. That's not what your religion should be built on to begin with. Heck, we don't even know who wrote the book of Genesis. It's only a legend that it was written by Moses, because that's technically, it's not Torah. There's only really 2 commandments in Genesis, and they're really reiterated again later on. Torah means the instructions, i.e. the instructions that God gave us on Mount Sinai, or started at Mount Sinai. It progressed ethically to the end of Deuteronomy, and then Revelation was capped off. That's ultimately what Torah means. It means instructions. When the king during Hakel read the Torah in front of the Jewish nation, I do not think he was reading the book of Genesis, but he was reading the law. Law is not narrative. Now, law could in some way contain narrative. This is how it appears in the Talmud. There's halachot that are presented on agadot. There's laws that are presented with a narrative, but that doesn't mean that the narrative itself is the law. So if there's an inconsistency in a portion of narrative in the Torah, that doesn't really speak negatively on the Torah or God's instructions. It's those instructions that are exceptional. When people say that it's the Bible that has civilized the world, I know Christians like to say, oh, you see, well, that means the New Testament. No, of course not. It means the instructions within the Torah, not even the creation story. It means Sedek, Sedek, Tirdov, V'afta l'recha kamocha, Hager lo tone, like all these ethical precepts. That's what civilized the world, not the narrative. This is why, I don't know why people convert to Islam. Because I tell people, in terms of ethics, Judaism and Islam don't really differ much, just because anything ethical in Islam came from Torah. It only differs in narrative and ceremony. Well, no one chooses a religion over that, right? I mean, people choose a decent path because it makes them into a decent person or encourages them to be more decent. I mean, who gives a crap if you believe in angels or demons or if a God has a white beard or he sends you a messenger? No one cares. I mean, that's not going to make you a more ethical person. It's not going to make you a more ethical person if you believe that God is 1 or God is 2 or God is 3, right? However, if God is evil, then yes, being that you believe he's your sustenance, you're going to want to emulate that God and thus do evil as well. And regarding Islam, like we said, because it's an offshoot of Judaism, if someone's looking for an ethical outlet, being that, again, it only differs in terms of narrative, it behooves you to go with what's older than, to go with what all these other movements came out of, all these other monotheistic movements, i.e. to go with Judaism. But it's the laws that make this code exceptional, not the narrative. I mean, I appreciate the narrative, but I think if they were trying to woo you with the narrative, they would have made it a lot cooler. 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest. George Lucas could have really kind of glamored it up with the earth being on the back of a turtle. And trust me, these Gentile nations have a good sense of imagination.